Dr. Elena Vasquez had explained human physiology to 3 different alien species over the course of her xenobiological career, but none of her previous subjects had ever looked at her with the profound curiosity of someone discovering that existence could be so beautifully, terrifyingly fragile. Arya, her assigned Zephyrian research partner, studied Elena's every movement with the fascination of a being who had never encountered anything that could be damaged by accident. "Your species requires this liquid for survival?" Arya asked, her ethereal form shifting slightly as she processed concepts that had no equivalent in Zephyrian experience. Her pointed ears, the only consistently physical aspect of her energy-based physiology, twitched with concentration as she watched Elena prepare biological samples. "Blood carries oxygen, nutrients, and waste products throughout our bodies," Elena explained for the 3rd time that week, noting how Arya's questions forced her to examine assumptions she'd never questioned. "Without circulation, our cells die within minutes. But you cannot simply redirect energy to maintain cellular function. We don't manipulate energy consciously. Our bodies handle everything automatically, but they're vulnerable to disruption." Elena held up a glass slide. "If this breaks and cuts me, I bleed. If I bleed too much, I die." Arya's form solidified slightly, her curiosity overriding her people's natural preference for existing as pure consciousness. "Show me. I'm not going to deliberately injure myself for educational purposes." "Then show me the potential for injury. Demonstrate the fragility you describe." Elena considered this request while organizing her equipment. The Zephyrian research program represented humanity's most significant breakthrough in interspecies communication, primarily because Arya's people possessed capabilities that made them invaluable allies for deep space exploration. Zephyrians could manipulate matter and energy at the molecular level, travel faster than light through conscious intent, and existed for millennia without aging. They were, by any objective measure, superior to humans in every quantifiable way. Which made Arya's fascination with human vulnerability both touching and slightly unsettling. "Arya, why are you so interested in our biological limitations?" "Because your species accomplishes remarkable things despite those limitations. My people create through pure will, we imagine something and it exists. But humans create through struggle against constraints we cannot comprehend." Her form shifted toward something more recognizably humanoid. "I want to understand the source of that strength." Elena was reaching for a new set of slides when the specimen container slipped from her fingers, shattering against the laboratory floor with a crystalline crash that seemed unnaturally loud in the sterile environment. Instinctively, she knelt to gather the larger fragments, cursing her clumsiness in languages that would have impressed her graduate school professors. The sharp edge of broken glass bit into her palm before she could register the danger, and Elena watched crimson drops well up from the cut with the detached interest of someone who'd spent years studying biological processes. It was a minor injury, barely worth noting, until she looked up and saw Arya's reaction. The Zephyrian had gone completely still, her energy form condensing into an almost solid state as she stared at Elena's bleeding hand. Her ears had shifted forward in intense concentration, and her luminous eyes tracked every drop of blood with the fascination of someone witnessing a miracle. "Elena," Arya whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested profound emotional disturbance, "is this how humans survive?" The question caught Elena completely off guard. "How do you mean?" "This, bleeding. This loss of essential fluids. This damage to your structure." Arya's form flickered with what Elena was beginning to recognize as distress. "How do you continue existing when your bodies are so easily damaged?" Elena looked at her cut hand, then at Arya's horrified expression, and suddenly understood the vast gulf between their species' experience of existence. "Arya, this is a minor injury. It will heal within days. It will heal. Your body repairs itself. All the time. Cuts heal, broken bones mend, even damaged organs can regenerate under certain circumstances." Elena reached for a basic medical kit, noting how Arya watched every movement with intense focus. Human bodies are constantly repairing themselves. But the blood loss. My body will replace this blood within hours. I'll probably never notice the difference. Aria's form solidified further, becoming more human-like as her emotional state intensified. Your species exists in a constant state of damage and repair. More or less. We get injured, we heal, we age, we adapt. It's just how biological life works. And you are not terrified by this constant vulnerability? Elena paused, medical supplies forgotten, as she realized that Aria's question went far deeper than biological curiosity. Are you terrified by the possibility of being vulnerable? My people have never experienced physical fragility. We exist as consciousness controlling energy and matter through will alone. The concept of damage that cannot be immediately corrected through conscious intent is. Arya struggled for words that could bridge the gap between their experiences. Incomprehensible. But you're trying to comprehend it. Because your species creates beauty and meaning despite existing in constant danger of dissolution. You form relationships knowing they will end. You pursue goals knowing you may not live to achieve them. You love other beings knowing that death will separate you. Aria's voice carried a note of wonder that made Elena's heart ache. How is this possible? Elena cleaned and bandaged her cut while considering how to explain the fundamental paradox of human existence to someone who had never faced mortality. Maybe because our limitations make everything more precious. When time is infinite, individual moments have less value. When life is guaranteed, death has no meaning. And when life is fragile? When life is fragile, every moment becomes significant. Every relationship matters. Every choice carries weight because you might not get another chance to choose. Arya moved closer, her energy-based physiology allowing her to examine Elena's bandaged hand without physical contact. You are saying that human strength comes from accepting weakness? I'm saying human strength comes from working with our limitations rather than being defeated by them. And this blood, Arya said softly, it represents everything that makes your species remarkable. Elena looked at the few drops of crimson still visible on the laboratory floor, thinking about how something so mundane could reveal such profound differences between species. It represents everything that makes us human. Vulnerable, temporary, and absolutely determined to make our brief existence matter. Arya was quiet for several minutes, her form shifting through various states of density as she processed concepts that challenged everything her people believed about consciousness and existence. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a note of decision that Elena hadn't heard before. Elena, I want to understand this existence you describe. I want to experience vulnerability, temporary biology, and the strength that comes from accepting limitations. That's. Elena tried to calculate the implications of a Zephyrian choosing to experience biological existence. That would be unprecedented. Your people have never attempted to simulate organic life. My people have never encountered a species that transforms fragility into strength through sheer determination and love. Elena realized that her simple cut had somehow become the catalyst for what might be the most significant breakthrough in interspecies relations since first contact. Arya, if you're serious about this, we'll need to approach it very carefully. The physiological and psychological implications could be enormous. Elena Vasquez, you have shown me that existence becomes more meaningful when it can be lost. Will you help me discover what it means to be beautifully, courageously fragile? Looking at Aria's luminous eyes filled with determination and wonder, Elena understood that she was being offered the opportunity to guide the first Zephyrian through the experience of mortality. The responsibility was staggering, but so was the potential for revolutionary understanding between their species. Yes, she said quietly, still watching the blood on her hand clot and begin the healing process that Arya found so miraculous. I'll help you understand what it means to be human. Teaching an immortal energy being about human vulnerability turned out to be significantly more complicated than Elena's xenobiology training had prepared her for, particularly when Aria's first attempt at simulating hunger resulted in her accidentally disrupting the ship's power grid for 6 hours. The incident earned them a formal reprimand from Captain Torres and a reputation among the crew as the scientists who broke physics again. Hunger is not supposed to affect external energy systems, Elena explained while reviewing the incident report that made their research sound like a series of containment failures. It's an internal biological signal indicating nutritional deficiency. But hunger feels like energy depletion, Arya protested, her form flickering with frustration. When I simulate the sensation you described, my consciousness interprets it as power insufficiency and automatically draws energy from nearby sources. Which explains why the entire engineering deck lost power when you tried to understand what it means to be hungry. I was being thorough. Elena rubbed her temples, feeling the beginning of what promised to be another spectacular headache. Arya, being human isn't just about experiencing individual sensations. It's about experiencing them within the context of a biological system that has built-in limitations. Limitations that your species somehow transforms into creative advantages. Sometimes. Other times limitations just make us tired and cranky and prone to making poor decisions. Elena gestured at her current situation. Case in point, I agreed to help an energy being experience mortality without fully considering the implications for ship operations. Arya's ears perked up with interest. You are experiencing regret? I'm experiencing the realization that my research methodology might be flawed. But you are not discontinuing the research. No, because watching you discover human experience is the most fascinating thing I've ever studied. Also, because your questions are making me understand my own species in ways I never expected. Over the following days, Elena developed increasingly creative methods for helping Arya experience biological existence without accidentally destroying ship systems. They started with simple concepts like touch, taste, and temperature variation, progressing gradually toward more complex experiences like fatigue and emotional fluctuation. This sensation you call tired, Arya said during one of their sessions, her form maintaining a deliberately limited energy state, it affects cognitive function as well as physical capability. Exhaustion impacts everything. Decision-making, emotional regulation, social interaction, even basic motor functions. Elena demonstrated by showing Arya her own reaction times after working double shifts during the previous week. When humans are sufficiently tired, we become less intelligent, more irritable, and prone to making mistakes we wouldn't make when well-rested. But you continue functioning despite these impairments. We don't have much choice. Bills need paying, responsibilities must be met, and the universe doesn't pause for human comfort levels. Arya processed this information with the intensity of someone solving fundamental philosophical problems. So humans maintain productivity despite biological constraints that actively hinder performance. Welcome to the human condition. We're remarkably good at functioning suboptimally. This explains so much about your species' technological development patterns. How so? Zephyrians create technology through pure conscious intent, we imagine improvements and they exist. But human technology shows evidence of iterative problem solving, gradual enhancement, and adaptation to biological limitations. Arya's form brightened with excitement. You create tools that compensate for your natural weaknesses, which makes your technology more robust than ours. Elena considered this perspective, realizing that Arya's observations contained insights about human innovation that she'd never considered. You're saying our limitations make us better engineers? I'm saying your limitations force you to develop solutions that work under adverse conditions. Zephyrian technology fails if consciousness is disrupted. Human technology continues functioning even when its operators are tired, distracted, or emotionally compromised. That's actually a profound observation about technological philosophy. It's also terrifying. Your species has built civilization despite existing in a constant state of biological crisis management. Their conversation was interrupted by Elena's personal communicator announcing an incoming priority message from Earth. The transmission carried authorization codes that indicated communication from the Xenobiological Research Council, which usually meant either extraordinary funding or career-ending oversight. Dr. Vasquez, came the voice of Director Harrison, we've been reviewing your research reports on Zephyrian consciousness studies. The progress reports indicate unusual developments in your subject's behavior patterns. Elena glanced at Arya, who had solidified enough to look genuinely nervous. Director, the research is proceeding according to established protocols. Arya has shown remarkable aptitude for understanding human biological processes. The concern isn't her aptitude, Doctor. The concern is reports indicating that she's attempting to simulate biological existence rather than simply observing it. Our Xenobiological Ethics Board has raised questions about the psychological impact of such experiments on energy-based consciousness. Sir, the research has been conducted with full informed consent and comprehensive safety protocols. The safety protocols don't account for an immortal being attempting to experience mortality, Dr. Vasquez. We're concerned about the long-term implications for Zephyrian psychological stability. Elena felt a familiar surge of protective instinct, the same response that had driven her to specialize in xenobiology despite the career risks involved. Director, Arya's research has produced breakthrough insights into both human and Zephyrian consciousness. Terminating the project now would represent a significant loss to interspecies understanding. Nevertheless, the Ethics Board has determined that the research poses unacceptable risks to your subject's well-being. You are ordered to conclude your studies and return Arya to the Zephyrian delegation for psychological evaluation. The communication ended, leaving Elena staring at equipment that suddenly felt inadequate for the magnitude of what they'd been exploring together. Arya had remained silent during the conversation, but her form had grown increasingly unstable as she processed the implications. They want to terminate our research, Elena said unnecessarily. They want to prevent me from learning about mortality because they believe it will damage my immortal consciousness. Arya's voice carried a note of bitter understanding. My people view biological existence as a contamination to be avoided rather than a phenomenon to be understood. And what do you view it as? As the most remarkable thing I've ever encountered. As evidence that consciousness can create meaning from limitation, beauty from vulnerability, and love from the knowledge that everything ends. Arya's form solidified into her most human-like configuration. Elena, I don't want to return to pure energy existence without understanding what I'll be leaving behind. Elena realized that her research had evolved far beyond academic study into something approaching personal transformation for both of them. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to experience human biology completely. Not simulation, not observation, but actual biological existence with all its risks and rewards. Arya, that would require fundamental alterations to your consciousness. The process might be irreversible. And the alternative is spending eternity wondering what I missed by choosing safety over understanding. Elena looked at her research partner, this extraordinary being who had somehow made her feel proud of human fragility rather than embarrassed by it, and realized that their work together had become something far more significant than either of them had anticipated. If we're going to defy the ethics board and attempt something unprecedented, Elena said slowly, we need to understand exactly what we're risking and exactly what we hope to achieve. I understand the risks. The question is whether you're prepared to help me discover what it truly means to be beautifully, temporarily, gloriously human. Elena thought about her career, her research, and the safe academic life she'd built through careful adherence to protocols and established procedures. Then she thought about Arya's innocent question about human survival and the wonder in her voice when she spoke about mortality as a gift rather than a curse. Yes, Elena said quietly, making a decision that would change both their lives forever. I'll help you understand what it means to be human. The Zephyrian delegation arrived with the subtle diplomacy of a solar flare, their energy signatures disrupting ship systems and making everyone aboard the Endeavour acutely aware that immortal beings were displeased with recent developments. Elena watched their approach through the observation deck's transparent steel windows, noting how their forms shifted between humanoid shapes and pure energy constructs with the fluid grace of beings who had never been constrained by physical laws. They're here for me, Arya said quietly, her own form maintaining the increasingly solid configuration she'd adopted during their experiments with biological simulation. The Elder Council believes I've been contaminated by prolonged exposure to mortal consciousness. Have you? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. I've been transformed by understanding that existence becomes more meaningful when it's temporary, more precious when it can be lost, more beautiful when it requires constant maintenance and care. Arya's ears drooped slightly. According to my people's philosophy, this represents severe psychological corruption. Elena felt a familiar surge of protective anger, the same response that had driven her to defend her research subjects from bureaucratic interference throughout her career. Your people's philosophy sounds remarkably narrow-minded for beings with cosmic consciousness. Immortal beings often develop rigid perspectives. When you have infinite time to consider problems, you tend to settle on solutions and resist change. Arya moved closer to the window, watching the approaching delegation with obvious apprehension. Elder Zephyrians view biological existence as a primitive phase that consciousness should transcend, not embrace. And what do you view it as? As the most remarkable thing I've ever discovered. As proof that intelligence can create meaning from constraint, love from limitation, and art from the knowledge that everything ends. Their conversation was interrupted by Captain Torres announcing that the Zephyrian delegation was requesting immediate transfer of their compromised researcher for psychological rehabilitation. Elena felt her research career flashing before her eyes, along with the growing realization that losing Arya meant losing the most significant discovery of her professional life. Elena, Arya said suddenly, what if there was a way for me to experience true biological existence instead of just simulating it? True biological existence would require fundamental alterations to your consciousness. The integration process would be irreversible and potentially dangerous. More dangerous than returning to the Elder Council for psychological reconditioning. Elena considered this while watching energy constructs the size of shuttlecraft maneuver toward their docking bay. What kind of integration are you considering? Temporary biological embodiment. Accepting physical form with all its vulnerabilities, maintaining that form long enough to understand human existence from the inside. Arya's expression grew determined. I want to feel hunger, fatigue, pain, and healing. I want to experience time as a limited resource rather than an infinite constant. Arya, that's not temporary integration. That's choosing mortality over immortality. That's choosing understanding over ignorance. And I can't make that choice alone. I need a human partner who can guide me through biological existence while I learn to navigate limitations I've never experienced. The implications hit Elena like a decompression breach. You're asking me to help you abandon immortality for the sake of research. I'm asking you to help me discover whether the Elder Council is right about biological existence being a primitive limitation, or whether humans have discovered something about consciousness that my people never imagined. And if the process kills you, then I will have died pursuing understanding rather than lived in ignorance. For a being who has existed for millennia without growth or change, death might be preferable to eternal stagnation. Elena realized that their research had evolved beyond xenobiological study into something approaching personal revolution for both species involved. Arya, if we attempt biological integration, we'll be defying both the Zephyrian Elder Council and human xenobiological ethics protocols. Yes. But we'll also be proving that consciousness can evolve beyond species limitations when guided by curiosity rather than fear. The docking bay announcement indicated that the Zephyrian delegation had arrived and was requesting immediate consultation with their wayward researcher. Elena looked at Arya, whose determination seemed to grow stronger as her people's disapproval became more immediate. How long would the integration process take? Elena asked. Unknown. I would be pioneering biological embodiment techniques that no Zephyrian has ever attempted. And how long would you remain in biological form? As long as necessary to understand whether mortality enhances consciousness or merely limits it. Elena thought about her career, her research, and the safe academic path she'd followed by studying alien species from a respectful distance. Then she thought about Arya's innocent question about human survival and the wonder in her voice when she spoke about fragility as a source of strength rather than weakness. The integration would require medical supervision and constant monitoring, Elena said slowly. Someone would need to guide you through every aspect of biological existence, from basic nutrition to complex emotional processing. Someone like you. Someone exactly like me, if I'm willing to risk my career helping you experience humanity firsthand. Aria's smile was radiant enough to power the ship's engines. Elena, are you willing to help me discover what it means to be gloriously, temporarily, magnificently mortal? Elena looked out at the Zephyrian delegation, then at her research partner whose curiosity about human vulnerability had somehow made her feel proud of her species' fragile resilience. Yes, Aria. I'm willing to help you understand what it means to be human. Even if it means defying both our species' expectations about appropriate interspecies relationships. Especially if it means proving that understanding between radically different forms of consciousness is not only possible but transformative. As they prepared to attempt something unprecedented in the history of either species, Elena realized that Aria's question about human survival had been answered not through explanation but through demonstration. Humans survive by choosing connection over safety, growth over stagnation, and love over fear, even when the choice leads into uncharted territory that could change everything. The biological integration process began at 0800 hours ship time and immediately proved that neither Elena's medical training nor Aria's cosmic consciousness had adequately prepared them for the reality of forcing immortal energy into mortal flesh. The transformation involved considerable screaming, several system overloads, and what Elena would later describe in her reports as unprecedented physiological anomalies that somehow resulted in positive outcomes. Is the pain supposed to be this intense? Aria gasped, her newly biological form writhing on the medical bay's examination table as her consciousness adapted to the limitations of nerve endings and neurotransmitters. Pain indicates that your nervous system is functioning correctly, Elena replied, monitoring vital signs that were fluctuating in patterns that defied every medical textbook she'd studied. Though I should mention that most humans don't experience pain quite this dramatically. Most humans weren't born as immortal energy constructs. I think some adjustment period is reasonable. The Elder Council had responded to their unauthorized experiment with the diplomatic equivalent of a cosmic temper tantrum, dispatching enforcement constructs to retrieve their wayward researcher and prevent further contamination of Zephyrian consciousness. Captain Torres was handling the political crisis with admirable calm, primarily by refusing to acknowledge that anything unusual was happening aboard his vessel. Dr. Vasquez, came his voice through the intercom, our Zephyrian guests are requesting immediate access to your research subject for emergency intervention. Tell them the patient is undergoing critical medical procedures and cannot be disturbed, Elena replied while adjusting Aria's foredrip and trying not to think about the career implications of harboring a fugitive from cosmic justice. They're offering to restore her to normal consciousness instantaneously. Tell them the patient specifically declined that treatment option. Aria managed a weak smile despite her obvious discomfort. Elena, am I officially your patient now? You're officially someone who chose to trust me with the most dangerous decision of your existence. That makes you my responsibility until you're stable enough to make informed choices about your future. And how will you determine when I'm stable? Elena checked her monitoring equipment, noting that Aria's vital signs were beginning to stabilize within recognizably human parameters. When you can experience a full day of biological existence without accidentally destroying ship systems or triggering diplomatic incidents. That seems like a reasonable benchmark. The first major test came when Aria experienced her first human hunger, a sensation that sent her into near panic until Elena explained that the gnawing emptiness was normal and easily resolved through food consumption rather than energy manipulation. Watching an immortal being discover the simple pleasure of eating reconstituted protein bars provided Elena with insights into human behavior that years of academic study had never revealed. This is remarkable, Aria said, examining her meal with the fascination of someone discovering fire. The flavors create emotional responses that enhance the nutritional value through psychological satisfaction. That's a very complicated way to say food tastes good when you're hungry. But the complexity is the point. Human experience layers multiple systems, biological, psychological, social, into unified experiences that are greater than the sum of their components. Elena realized that Aria's transformation was providing her with a unique perspective on human consciousness, seeing familiar experiences through the eyes of someone encountering them for the first time. What's the most surprising thing about biological existence? The way limitations enhance rather than constrain experience. When I existed as pure energy, creating matter was effortless and therefore meaningless. Now that I must work within biological constraints, every small achievement feels significant. Such as successfully consuming nutrition without choking, or walking across the room without falling down, or having a conversation without accidentally broadcasting my thoughts to everyone within 50 meters. You're broadcasting thoughts? Not anymore. I learned to control that yesterday after accidentally sharing my confusion about human digestive processes with the entire engineering crew. Elena laughed despite their precarious situation. I was wondering why Chief Engineer Lopez kept asking me about alien bathroom requirements. Their moment of levity was interrupted by ship-wide alerts indicating that the Zephyrian enforcement constructs were no longer requesting permission to board. Energy readings spiked as cosmic beings began overriding human technology through pure conscious intent. They're coming for me, Aria said, her newly human physiology displaying fear responses that would have been impossible in her energy form. Elena, if they force me back to pure consciousness, I'll lose everything I've learned about biological existence. Then we don't let them force you back. How do we stop immortal energy beings with technology beyond human comprehension? Elena looked at her research partner, this extraordinary being who had chosen mortality over immortality for the sake of understanding, and realized that their answer lay in the very limitations the Zephyrians considered weaknesses. We use exactly what they can't understand, human stubborn determination combined with biological creativity. Elena began activating emergency protocols that would seal the medical bay. Aria, can you access your energy manipulation abilities while maintaining biological form? Partially. Why? Because we're going to prove that hybrid consciousness can accomplish things that neither pure energy nor pure biology could achieve alone. The confrontation with the Elder Council became a demonstration of everything Elena and Aria had discovered about the relationship between limitation and strength. Aria's partially biological consciousness allowed her to use Zephyrian abilities in ways that pure energy beings couldn't comprehend, while Elena's human creativity provided tactical approaches that immortal beings had never needed to develop. Elder Xiphon, Aria addressed the lead enforcement construct, her voice carrying new harmonics that combined human vocal cords with Zephyrian energy manipulation. I have not been contaminated by biological existence. I have been enhanced by understanding that consciousness grows through embracing rather than avoiding limitation. You have chosen mortality over transcendence, youngling. This represents fundamental corruption of your essential nature. This represents evolution. And I choose to continue evolving alongside the human who taught me that fragility can be a source of strength rather than weakness. The resolution came when Elena made her own leap of faith, accepting Aria's offer to share hybrid consciousness that would allow her to experience aspects of Zephyrian existence while retaining her human biology. The partial transformation granted her energy manipulation abilities and extended lifespan while preserving the biological experiences that Aria had found so meaningful. Dr. Vasquez, Director Harrison's voice crackled through the communicator, "What's your status?" "Director, I'm pleased to report that our research has achieved complete success. We've proven that consciousness can evolve beyond species limitations through collaborative exploration and mutual respect." "And your research subject?" Elena looked at Aria, whose biological form now hummed with energy that enhanced rather than replaced her newfound humanity. "My research partner has demonstrated that the greatest discoveries happen when we choose understanding over prejudice, growth over stagnation, and love over fear." "Research partner?" "We've established a permanent collaborative arrangement that will allow us to continue studying consciousness evolution while exploring the galaxy together. Also, our combined abilities have solved the ship's chronic power efficiency problems and revolutionized our understanding of bioenergetic symbiosis." "Dr. Vasquez, are you informing me that you've undergone unauthorized consciousness modification?" "I'm informing you that we've achieved the first successful human-Zephyrian hybrid partnership, proving that evolution can be guided by compassion rather than survival necessity. The Elder Council's response was swift and predictable. Immediate exile from Zephyrian space for Arya and formal censure from the human xenobiological establishment for Elena. But as they departed aboard a research vessel powered by their combined consciousness, Elena realized that losing official approval was a small price for gaining something unprecedented, true partnership with a being who understood that strength came from embracing rather than avoiding vulnerability. "Elena," Arya said as they set course for the unexplored Rim territories, "do you regret choosing transformation over career security?" "I regret nothing about choosing to help you discover what it means to be human," Elena replied, watching stars stream past through their ship's enhanced viewing systems. "Though I should mention that being part Zephyrian is going to require some adjustment time. Such as learning to control energy manipulation abilities that activate when I get excited. Yesterday I accidentally supercharged the coffee maker when I was enthusiastic about our research findings. The coffee was excellent. The coffee was transcendent. Which proves that our partnership has practical benefits beyond scientific discovery." Arya laughed, the sound carrying harmonics that seemed to make the ship itself more alive. "Thomas, our bond proves that consciousness can evolve beyond species limitations when two beings choose to trust each other completely. And what do we do with that proof? We find others like us. Beings from different species who are ready to discover that love can create connections stronger than biological programming or cultural conditioning." Arya's expression grew thoughtful. "We become living evidence that the universe's greatest discoveries happen when individuals choose understanding over prejudice." Elena realized that their journey together had transformed from research project to life mission, proving that the most profound questions about consciousness and existence could only be answered through direct experience shared with someone who cared enough to take extraordinary risks. "Arya, your original question about how humans survive, do you understand the answer now?" "Yes. Humans survive by choosing connection over isolation, growth over safety, and love over fear. They survive by proving that fragility can be transformed into strength when shared with others who understand that every moment matters because moments can end." "And do you want to survive the way humans survive?" "I want to survive the way we survive, as partners who have learned that the greatest gift consciousness can offer is the courage to change, to grow, and to love someone completely despite knowing that everything, even love, is temporary and therefore infinitely precious." As they traveled toward distant worlds where their hybrid consciousness could help other species discover the transformative power of chosen vulnerability, Elena understood that Arya's innocent question about blood and survival had led them to the most profound answer either species could have imagined, that true survival meant choosing to live fully, love completely, and embrace the beautiful uncertainty of existence shared with someone who understood that fragility was humanity's greatest strength.